G'day all, it's Colin from PCTLC and thanks for joining me. Today I wanted to have a chat about a subject that we brought up a few weeks ago on BigDaddyLinux Live. It was on the 19th of October, so it was a few weeks ago, and Adam Grubbs brought up an interesting subject regarding distro hopping. So, and then Rocco asked me, I think last week or the week before, if I wanted to, because he knew I had something more to say about it, but I wasn't quite thinking of it any longer after that. And then now that he has asked me again, I've sort of had time to reflect and think about it. So I thought I might just talk about this on my channel and just give my perspective on what it is we're really chasing when we're distro hopping. And I think there's two types of distro hoppers that I can see, and there's the new user, and then there's users that have been around Linux for quite a long time. Now, I would think that users that have been around Linux for a long time are probably chasing nothing that's really there, which is what Adam said, and I have to agree with that. We are looking for something, and I think it's a habit we've got into. And I think the new users are chasing discovery. So I can understand new users distro hopping because they're just trying to discover what Linux is all about and what's on offer. And I can understand that. But us Linux users that have been around for a while, I think have got ourselves into this habit of chasing something better from a distro that's probably never going to be there, because it's something it's a transition that's taken place that we were probably chasing quite a while ago, and it was probably more justified back then than what it is now. And if just let me explain, let's have a look at something else here. Currently I'm running Ubuntu Mate. So what we're going to do in Ubuntu Mate is go to the control center and we'll go to Mate tweak, and I'm just going to pick a panel layout and probably not familiar. I think traditional is probably one that we can look at. And if you have a look at Ubuntu back in the GNOME 2 days, this is what it would have been, this type of menu, cascading menu I think you would call it, and it had the three menus there. I think I remember quite clearly this is how it sort of looked. And then any open windows was down the bottom here like so. And then you would have had, if we go back to Mate tweak, and we go to, let's pick Redmond. Now Redmond has this setup, whereas, oops, I've clicked the wrong button. Whereas you've got the advanced Mate menu. Now, the advanced Mate menu was something that Linux Mint was using. I think it was called the Mint menu or something like that. And it was, at the time, very advanced, because all you had to do is type a package name in the search area, and you could actually, it would come up and tell you that there was a package there, and you could choose to install it. Now, for some reason, it had all these packages running in the background if you searched for it. Probably the most common ones. I don't know how far or how extensive it was, but I just remember I used to, if I was looking for GDebi, I typed GDebi in the search criteria. There it would be GDebi. It give you the option to install. So that's probably why it was called an advanced menu. So those examples there that I gave you within the Ubuntu Mate desktop was very familiar to going back to the GNOME 2 days. And during those times we had, I think, KDE 3 or 4. I probably don't remember KDE. I don't have a lot of memories of KDE back then. I never used it much, if at all. But then we had, so then you have the KDE, which is this desktop here. This is today's KDE, but it's still KDE nonetheless. It's Plasma now. But this was, the KDE desktop, just to give you a slight example. Don't really have anything that's running 3 or 4, although the Trinity desktop does. If you want to know what the KDE 3 or 4 look like, that's what the Trinity desktop does. So I probably should have included the EzeeLinux OS Trinity desktop to show you the old KDE days, but it doesn't really matter. It's just I'm just trying to get to the examples of what I'm talking about here. Then you've got the XFCE desktop. I don't know how long that's been around for, but if we have a look at that, the XFCE desktop hasn't changed a lot. We all know it has very slow development, but very stable desktop to say the least. So this is the XFCE desktop, and you can always, even though it's just been updated to 4.14 now, you can still go back to it and be very, very familiar with this particular desktop. There's not a lot that normally changes with this one. There's only very small tweaks, but they are very welcome tweaks nonetheless. So that's the XFCE desktop. And then we had LXDE. Now LXDE now has gone to LXQT. So they're building it now on the Qt desktop framework, whatever it's called. I'm not overly technical regarding those things. But now you've got the LXDE moving to LXQT. And these desktops have all been around for quite a long time, since the GNOME 2 days. LXDE has been around for a while, and it's only just recently started being updated to LXQT and making the transition. So let's have a look at the LXQT desktop. That's this one here. And this is another one, very lightweight and so forth. So, there's been some developments there as well, and a big change to the LXDE desktop. So that's all been happening. So what I'm leading to here is the distro hopping, I think, that we used to do was when everything changed from GNOME 2 to GNOME 3. And just to give you an example of GNOME 3, so then we had a GNOME 2 was transitioned to GNOME 3. And this is what we have here, was the GNOME 3. And that's when all the big changes started happening. And I think this is where a lot of innovation was happening with the Unity desktop. And then you had the Cinnamon desktop come out because they all sort of shifted from the GNOME 3. Nobody sort of really liked the GNOME 3 desktop or the paradigm or the workflow, whatever it was. And that's when you've seen a lot of changes start happening and people were innovating. So I think that's where distro hopping sort of changed in a way that we just wanted to keep chasing that innovation and the changes that were being made. And I think that's where we get stuck into that distro hopping ways that we've got now, whereas really the changes have got to a point where they're stagnant and they're not going to change too much moving forward now. So if we have a look at the changes that were made when the GNOME 3 came out, you had Ubuntu move to the Unity desktop. Nobody really liked that. And then when it went away, everybody loved it. I think that's become a bit of a meme or something, that one there. But let's have a quick look at the Unity desktop. So this is the Unity desktop, and this is the way that Ubuntu decided to go with Unity. And they had quite a few innovations in that with the heads-up display. So if you was in any of these particular applications and you hit the Alt button, you could do a search for whatever you want, say for printer or anything like that, scale, or anything, color scale, horizontal scroll, it would come up with almost anything instead of trying to work through the menus and look for what you were if you knew what you're looking for, Alt was a great way of doing that. That was the Unity desktop. So Ubuntu decided to move to Unity and put their own spin on GNOME 3. And Linux Mint decided they didn't like the GNOME 3 layout either and thought they would fork their own desktop in the way of Cinnamon. So let's take a look at the Cinnamon desktop. So as you can see here, this is the Cinnamon desktop, and they've forked that into looking like a Windows type style layout that Cinnamon's always had. And it's sort of like, I think back in the GNOME 2 days, I sort of had this very similar layout anyway, just that they've changed the menu and the way in which Cinnamon works with your hot corners and all that sort of stuff, and drag window to size or quarter and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of ways you can tweak the Cinnamon desktop. So if we have a look at since the implementation of GNOME 3, there was quite a lot of innovations going on. I didn't like Unity at first, and I sort of liked the layout, but I just didn't like the fact that I lost my tweaking and theming and all that sort of stuff. I couldn't really do that, and I lost that ability, and that was a bit annoying, but it was like going back to the start. So every time something new comes out, it's like you're starting all over again. And that can be quite frustrating sometimes with the changes in technology. It's like we advance and then we go and then we step back one because we can't do this and that. And then we advance and then we step back one. Seems to be that's the way it works. And all in the favour of advancing technology, I suppose. But yeah, I think that's where we got to the point of distro hopping, especially the people who have been within Linux for a long time. I think that's where the distro hopping ways have began, and we're still chasing that new innovation, but it's probably just not happening anymore. We are where we are at the moment, and what you need to decide now is what is the best base for you and what works well for you, and also the community and the support that a distro offers, I think, is probably more to the point of how you would choose a distro and whether it has the packages that you need out of the box and all that. Because let's face it, once you've got a desktop installed, I think I could make every desktop, just about, XFCE, Mate, Budgie, Ubuntu, all of them. GNOME 3 as well. You could make them all look exactly the same. I mean, this is my desktop at the moment, and I've had a few extensions installed. I'm on Debian GNOME, and if you look at that and dash to panel settings, sorry, wrong setting, arc menu settings, sorry. And if we was to go to config, where is it, appearance, then I can change the appearance of that mint menu style and apply that. And now I've got the mint menu. So, and then we've also got the GNOME menu as well, and you got the super key with all your open windows. So you've got all that. I reckon I could just about go through all of these and make them look exactly the same. You could set them up almost the same. That's the way it is. XFCE is very modular, easy to set up. Kubuntu with the Plasma desktop, you could set up like that. Lubuntu was already set up that way. I think you can change panels in Lubuntu. I didn't actually check that out. But, you can move the panel from top to bottom, left to right, and all that sort of thing. You could make it look like Unity. You could make it look like Windows. You could make it look like pretty much anything you wanted to make it look like. So I think it all comes back down to the community of a distro, the support a distro offers, and the base that's right for you, and if it's got all the applications. And that's really not starting to matter anymore because of things like snaps and flatpaks and app images and all those sorts of innovative apps that are going around. And the other one that was that was forked as well was, well, actually not forked, sorry, was designed by Ike Doherty himself, was the Budgie desktop. And he's made that pretty much from scratch, I believe. And so that's another desktop environment that you have around as well. So there's different bases that you can work with. You have Arch, Debian, Ubuntu, then you got Manjaro, you've got also Elementary's got their own Pantheon desktop. So you've also got the Budgie desktop as well, Ubuntu Budgie, and you've also got the makers of the makers of Budgie, which is Solus, and they have a desktop, whereas you can change all these things as well in the settings, Budgie desktop settings. You can move your panel around, you can put it down the bottom like so. You could turn it into a dock mode. So if we switched off the dock, which one is it? Panel. You could quit that panel there if you're the dock if you want. And then you could change this into a dock. Bottom panel you could change into a dock. Into dock mode, just like that. So Budgie offers another simple change around. It's like XFCE, but it's got a lot more simple settings. So as you can see, there's a lot of reason in the past to have been doing a lot of distro hopping and checking out what's new and what's been changed and what's fresh. And you know, you have the Deepin desktop environment as well. But I think it comes down to what you're comfortable with, how it works, and whether it just works for you and it's got all the maybe keyboard shortcuts you need, and whether you're a mouse user, a keyboard user, whether the keyboard shortcuts offers what you need in that distro. It comes down to a lot of factors. So, and I think these days you could distro hop to just see what distros have got on offer, but you could be distro hopping forever and a day and pretty much just keep chasing that. I think we need to look at what works and what's suitable for you and stick to one distro maybe. I know for me, I'm still distro hopping on my main system, but I really do need to settle on a distro. It's always tempting to try out different distros just for the change. So, you know, maybe I need to find a desktop that I can change around a little bit. And I think the GNOME desktop offers that with the extensions and everything. Now, a lot of people say, you know, why do you need so many extensions for that to run and all that sort of stuff? But I mean, if they're there on offer, it's no different than running Cinnamon and installing some things, applets and all that sort of thing. They do the same thing. GNOME, for example, you've got to go to the GNOME extensions website and check it on and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, it depends what you like, what you're comfortable with in the way that it works. So I think that's the reason why people distro hop. New users, they're fine. They're just discovering how the desktops work. And that's a natural process, I think, for when you first come to Linux. Whereas some of us that have been around Linux for a long time, yeah, what is it we're really chasing is a good question. And I think that's probably a bit of an answer to why we distro hop and what we were chasing, but what we're chasing now, it's a good question. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but I think you need to look at what distros suit you at the end of the day and what they do offer. So what do you think? Do you think I'd like to hear some of your opinions and whether you distro hop or you're happy with the distro you're on and you've found your comfort zone with your distro and you can be happy with running that and forever and a day. Let's face it, when you're on Windows, you're stuck on Windows and that doesn't change and you just use it. So are we still going through toying around a phase where we're toying around with the desktop and just trying to find what's what? Because at the end of the day, once you have a desktop set up, you can have a really good welcome screen and all this sort of thing. And that's all good because that's all good stuff. But once you've gone through that setup phase, it's pretty much set and forget. And it's done and you'll be running it and you're not going to be probably using that anymore. Some welcome screens do have some things in there where you can go back and change some things. So, I mean, that's something that they do offer as well. So what do you think? Are you happy with the desktop you got? Is there a reason why you think that you distro hop? I'd be interested to know. Anyway, that's my take on it all. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it interesting and informative. I hope you found this topic interesting in itself. And thanks for watching.